Throughout the past decade, The Walking Dead has given us many different villains through the different series of the TV show that we have seen. We have seen various villains within the TV shows that have been developed. But what makes these villains so engaging and ferocious? In this video, I'm going to be discussing exactly that. What makes them memorable, but also what makes them have the best possible impact on the broader franchise. Also, with fair warning, this will have massive spoilers for the TV show, so if you do not want the show to be spoiled, please click off now and come back when you've watched it. Shane. Shane is often considered as a villain with the best interests of his group at heart. Throughout the first season of the TV show, he seems to lose his grasp on the control he had on his group of the Atlanta camp survivors. Shane within the first season is relatively sane, knowing the walkers are a huge threat to the survivors and being able to react appropriately to this threat. The first time we see Shane deliberately try to do something evil is when he beats up Ed for hitting Carol, and then later in the season when he tries to force himself onto Laurie at the research center. As said, within the first season, he's relatively sane. It's only when the group loses Sophia and he begins to also lose the relationship that he had with Rick's wife Laurie, and that is what makes him become the primary antagonist of The Walking Dead's second season. When Carl is shot by Otis accidentally, the Green Farm survivors need the medical supplies from a local FEMA shelter to save Carl's life. Shane returns from the walker-infested high school without Otis, and says that Otis sacrificed himself to the walkers in order to save Carl. However, in the next episode, we can see Shane losing his mentality and his grip on sanity, when it is actually revealed that he knew him and Otis would not both be able to escape with the supplies. As such, he leaves Otis to die to the walkers. The next main evil thing that Shane does is go against Rick and Herschel's ways of leaving the barn intact. The barn was filled with walkers, and the survivors knew this, but they were trying to respect Herschel's wishes because they were staying on his land. However, Shane breaks open the lock and kills all the walkers while the inconsolable Green family stand by and watch as their family is killed. This event leads to Herschel leaving the farm and going to town, where Rick, Glenn, and Herschel are attacked by scavengers. One of these scavengers gets injured, and the survivors take him back to the farm. Randall, the surviving scavenger, is locked away, and they try to take him further away from the farm so he would not bring the rest of his group back to the farm. However, he reveals he knows the Green family and has done for a while, which leads to a massive brawl between Shane and Rick, as Shane tries to kill him. All these events lead to a failed execution of Randall when Dale dies, and it's decided that in his memory they won't execute Randall. And then Shane takes matters into his own hands and leads Randall into the woods and kills him. Shane then leaves the woods and tries to kill Rick, claiming Randall attacked him. But Rick was too smart, and Rick knew Shane wanted to kill him. So to protect the survivors, he had to kill Shane, and when Shane reanimated, Carl had to put him down. Shane is a pretty average villain. He does not go out of his way to kill anyone in the original group, but he does kill Otis. His death count is not overly high throughout his time on the show, only really killing 2 people within the apocalypse. But it is his intentions to make him as evil as he is within the show. What makes Shane so good is that he is very slowly losing his grasp on the reality of the situation and his humanity as well. Shane was a really good warm-up villain for the show, and he is obviously one of the most memorable, with his daughter Judith still being in the show. The Governor. The Governor is my favourite villain within the entirety of the Walking Dead franchise. Initially, he's portrayed as the level-headed leader of Woodbury that knows how to protect the people who live within his confine. The people inside of Woodbury are almost shielded to the actual danger of the walkers, and the governor does gladiator-style fights to create this illusion. As previously stated, the governor starts off as a level-headed villain, even taking in sick and injured people. However, his intentions are much darker, and he intends to create a paramilitary group after the events of Operation Cobalt. For clarity, this is the event where the army completely pulled out of all the settlements that had been created during the outbreak. He finds a group of soldiers and ambushes them to steal their weapons and keep their safety intact throughout the apocalypse. The governor starts to lose his sanity when he lets a certain dreadlocked swordswoman in, Michonne. Michonne is entirely skeptical of the governor. You could even say she thought he was sus. I'm never saying that again in a video. Michonne leaves and comes across Rick and the other survivors remaining in the prison colony. She tells Rick of the group that are there and also tells him that the governor and his group have Glenn and Maggie. The rest of the episode cuts back to the harshities that the governor is committing on Glenn and Maggie, even ordering a walker to be thrown at Glenn while he's tied up and unable to defend himself, in an attempt to get information about their settlement at the prison. And then finally, in order to break Glenn, he threatened to sexually abuse Maggie, and Glenn was forced to tell the governor about the prison. It's also worth mentioning that the governor is certain the walkers can retain memories and emotions even after they're reanimated. He even keeps the reanimated corpse of his daughter in the hope that she will come back. Oh, and a wall of fish tanks filled with his victims' heads. Michonne finds this and smashes the tanks and kills the governor's walker daughter in front of him, which leads to a massive fight between the two of them where Michonne takes out the governor's eye. This leads to the first all-out war between the groups, with constant fighting on both sides, until eventually Rick and his group eradicate the governor's paramilitary and take in the people of Woodbury and burn Woodbury to the ground. Happy ending, right? Wrong. The governor and his hero complex are back, and this time they have a vendetta. The governor wants to kill Rick, and finds a group of people who are just trying to survive. But they have an edge that the governor knows he needs. They have a tank. A literal tank. The governor begins to seed lies into this group that he has found until they decide to attack the prison with the tank and blow the prison to smithereens. The governor also in this instance decapitates Herschel, Rick's essentially a mentor and close friend, and the mother to Maggie and father-in-law to Glenn. The governor has all but won at this point, and he has Rick pinned down as the tank rolls through. The governor is about to kill Rick, but Michonne stabs him and leaves him to the walkers to die. Why do I like the governor, I bet you guys are wondering. The governor brings an element of insanity to the show, but not like Shane. The governor is clearly a threatening character the whole time he is on the show, but he loses, and yet he still comes back and takes out the prison. The governor is the perfect example of how the apocalypse changed people. He went from a relatively decent man with a wife and a daughter into a psychopathic monster with a thirst for the murder and who will not let anyone else survive throughout the apocalypse other than him and the people of Woodbury. The governor is a leader who loses his grip on his community and therefore seeks major vengeance on those who have wronged him. Negan. Where do I begin with Negan? There was an entire season, granted not a great one, into foreshadowing the monster that we were about to witness. People would trade goods for their lives, and this made Negan and the Saviors a very lucrative and luxurious colony. We do not see Negan for the entire of Season 6 until the last episode, but we already know that something big is coming, and that the world for Rick and the Alexandria colony will never be prepared to deal with. In the first full episode with Negan, we see how monstrous he is. Within 10 minutes, he has already killed 2 fan-favourite characters in Glenn and Abraham with his weapon of choice, Lucille, a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire. He kills these 2 in front of the fear-paralysed group. Negan then takes Rick for a drive and throws Rick's hatchet onto the roof of an RV and makes Rick run through the walkers to retrieve it with nothing other than his bare hands. Negan then proceeds to take half of your shit for the next episodes. Rick does not know what to do to fight back against Negan. He feels like this is the first time he has lost control of his dictatorship. Negan then proves his monstrosity again by killing Deanna's last son for attempting to grass up to him and leave Alexandria to join the Saviors. Rosita, in revenge, shoots Negan with a bullet that a member of Alexandria, Eugene, had built from scratch. This leads to Negan taking Eugene and demanding he produces bullets for the Saviors. Negan proves his ferocity time and time again. When Carl goes to confront Negan, Negan demands he take his eye patch off and humiliates him. However, Carl seems to have gotten through to Negan, as Negan seems to quite respect Carl, a lot more than he seems to respect Rick. The rest of the fight is mainly just both sides prepping for a fight, and these fights keep coming head to head. There's the Battle of the Sanctuary, where the Alexandrians plowed a truck into the Sanctuary and let countless walkers in an attempt to trap them and tear them apart from the inside. Then there's the Battle of Alexandria, where the Saviors sent countless explosives into the compound in an attempt to flush out the people of Alexandria, but they're hiding in the sewers, and this is unfortunately where Carl dies. Carl left notes behind for everyone, and even left one behind for Negan. Rick reads these letters and takes them to heart. There is one battle left, which doesn't have a fancy name, so I'm going to call it the Battle of the Stained Glass. This battle was being teased all season, with flashbacks and flash forwards and hallucinations that Rick was having of that piece of stained glass. Carl wanted Negan to live, but Rick is so angry. When it is just Rick and Negan left fighting, Rick slashes Negan's throat. However, Rick remembers Carl's letter, learning to live alongside one another after the war. And Rick takes it upon himself to order that Negan is medically treated and imprisoned. Not all of the original group take this particularly well, especially Maggie, who leaves Alexandria and Hilltop as a response. Negan is a monster. Well, he's a monster during these seasons. The direction they have recently taken with Negan, particularly with the Whisperer War, is that of a redemption arc, until eventually he is welcomed as a member of Alexandria. Negan is a very good villain because of how little care he has for everything and how much control he has over his group, with them all constantly repeating, "We are all Negan." Negan has a good story as a villain, but his redemption arc showcases so much more. His leather jacket, a gift from his wife, and the bat too. When he left his wife to get supplies to treat her cancer, she killed herself, and Negan in a rage killed several bikers who had formed a gang to save the people who gave him the supplies. This is when the Saviors were born. Negan is not a bad guy, I would argue, anymore. He did bad things, but ultimately he did it because he had the Savior's best interests at heart. That was his motive from the beginning, to save people. The Whisperers. Have you ever considered wearing the skin of something that wants to kill you? Meet the Whisperers, a large group capable of controlling and moving even the largest walker herds. We've seen for many seasons the survivors use zombie guts to sneak inside the walker herds, but this time the Whisperers are wearing their skin to blend with them. The Whisperers are led by Alpha, the first female villain within AMC's The Walking Dead, and by God is she terrifying. Always hunched down like a demon, twitching here and there, and always whispering and subtly threatening the survivors. The Whisperers are first introduced when one of them kills Jesus in the mid-season of Season 8, just as the communities are starting to recover with the loss of Rick and the conclusion of the fighting between the Saviors and the Alexandrian community. We meet Alpha, the leader of the Whisperers, when she abducts Luke and Aiden from the communities. In retaliation, Michonne kidnaps Alpha's daughter Lydia, and this is where we meet Lydia and see her relationship with the survivors change. Alpha turns up at the gates of Alexandria, demanding to take Lydia back, and Henry, Carol's adopted son, who had grown quite fond of Lydia, decided to go with her, and Alpha imprisoned him. When Henry reached the Whisperer camp, Alpha tried to get Lydia to kill Henry, but Lydia refused, and she kept refusing. And eventually, Daryl came and rescued them both from the Whisperers. The communities are scared, demanding they silence the Whisperers. And the communities organize a fair to sign a charter that they will all protect each other in the event that the Whisperers attack. The fair ended awfully, as it had been infiltrated by Alpha, and she kidnapped multiple members of each community, including some who had been in the show for years. We have seen characters be brutally executed by villains before, but never on this scale. People thought Negan was monstrous for killing 2 of the original group, but Alpha and the Whisperers killed 10, including Enid, Tara, and Carol's son Henry. The communities are torn. They are even more scared. The kingdom has fallen, and after a winter of not crossing the borders between the Whisperer land and the Alexandrian land, a large satellite falls, and they are forced across the border to prevent a large-scale forest fire just outside of Oceanside. In retaliation, Alpha expands her borders, and in doing so cuts off supply lines to Alexandria, all while a Whisperer is undercover inside Alexandria, poisoning the water supply and making them sick. When Sadiq discovers Dante, Sadiq is killed by the undercover Whisperer. Alpha also reveals her nuclear walker horde of thousands and thousands of walkers, enough to wipe out a city. Later on in the season, Negan escapes his confinement and goes to join the Whisperers due to his long imprisonment. He then begins to enter a physical relationship with Alpha, and even has his own Whisperer skin mask. The Whisperers and Negan then go on to attack Hilltop, setting it on fire and destroying it in the process. Hilltop had become inhabitable, which means the only community remaining was Alexandria from the original four of the Sanctuary, Alexandria, Kingdom, and Hilltop. Negan has been helping Carol the whole time. They struck a deal that Negan would be freed in return for Alpha's head. Negan kills Alpha and mounts her head on a spike for Carol to find. But Beta finds the head first and loses it. Beta is not very mentally stable, and he begins to hear the Whisperers talking to him, and hallucinates that Alpha's reanimated head is also talking to him. The survivors of Alexandria know there is an assault coming. Beta is angry, and they have a massive walker horde. This horde rolls through Alexandria and heads to the confines that the Alexandrian community is hiding at. The survivors know this is their final chance to silence the Whisperers once and for all, and they adopt a technique used by the Whisperers, sneaking through the herd and taking out the Whisperers one by one. Within the commotion, Beta spots Negan and runs for him, throwing him to the ground and having him at death's door, until Daryl rescues Negan's and stabs 2 knives deep into Beta's eyes. They had silenced the Whisperers. What made the Whisperers so good? The most dangerous thing in the Walker world is the humans and zombies, and the Whisperers combine both. Not only are they merciless, but they are also downright creepy. They leave their own to die behind. They can control the walkers that will one-hit KO anyone within the apocalypse, and their horde is that of a nuclear bomb in terms of devastation. Alpha is a good female antagonist, and is partnered up with Beta really well. The reason I like Alpha is because the Whisperer War really does feel like it is Carol against Alpha and Daryl against Beta. And after losing Rick before the Whisperer War and losing Michonne shortly after, it really gave these two long-running characters their chance to shine on the screen.